Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. Today we are ending the Evil Dead series with the 2023 horror movie Evil Dead Rise. Here is your trivia question for today. What is the name of the pizza place from this movie? The answer will be at the end of the episode. So this time everything goes down in a high-rise apartment complex, more than likely where they got the name Evil Dead Rise. This is Ellie. Things have not been going well for her recently. Her husband left her and her kids. The apartment complex they're living in is about to be condemned, and they're about to get kicked out. So she is trying to raise three kids on her own: Danny, Cassie, and Bridget. Her sister Beth comes for a surprise visit because she has some issues in her life going on as well. Now, of course, things keep going from bad to worse. There's an earthquake in the parking garage that opens up a hole down into a vault below the building. Danny, of course, climbs down into this hole and finds a book, which ends up being the Necronomicon, and three records, which end up being recordings about the book, and of course, passages from the book, which once the passages are said aloud, the ancient evil is released again. So Ellie begins to start acting very strangely. As we soon discover, she has been possessed and is now a deadite. And now everyone's life is up for grabs, as anyone in the building may become possessed. Originally, Evil Dead Rise was going to be a straight to streaming HBO Max movie, but early screenings of it did so well they decided to do a theatrical release. This is now one of only two Evil Dead movies that have not been directed by Sam Raimi. This film was actually directed by Lee Cronin. This is, however, the second time where an Evil Dead movie was primarily filmed in New Zealand. The 2013 remake was the first time. Now, I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I thought Alyssa Sutherland did an amazing job in this movie. I would absolutely give her an Oscar just for her performance as Ellie. I also really enjoyed Nell Fisher's portrayal of the character of Cassie. I'm so happy that nowadays there's an actual archetype for little girls who are into creepy morbid things. If you didn't know, this is the first time in any Evil Dead movie where there's a transgender character. And Morgan Davies, who plays the character of Danny, is also transgender. Lily Sullivan is a great choice in this movie as Beth, who is kind of like the Ash Williams for this movie. Well, of course, she does use the chainsaw and she uses the boomstick. While holding the shotgun during this scene, Beth actually says the line, "Come get some," which is actually a direct reference towards Army of Darkness, where Bruce Campbell does the same line in the S Smart. Now, by any chance, were you wondering why this is the first movie where the chainsaw isn't red? Well, they actually made it yellow because this is also the first Evil Dead movie where the yellow delta does not show up in it, and the director wanted to have a small nod towards that. Another thing you may or may not have noticed, the tattoos on Ellie's arms are vines. This is also a reference to the fact that she's the one who gets caught up in the elevator cabling, in the same way that the characters from the past movies got caught up in the tree vines. When it comes to fake blood in the Evil Dead series, the first movie used almost 300 gallons worth, the most recent remake used about 70,000 gallons, and it's been noted in this movie about 1,720 gallons were used. Also, when talking about blood, you can't forget about the very direct reference that they have towards the horror classic The Shining, with both movies having elevators spilling out with a flood of blood. There's also some great lines from previous Evil Dead movies that do get used in this one. For instance, when walking down the hallway, most of the corpses are saying "dead by dawn." There's also the line of "I'll swallow your soul" that gets said in the movie. Now, in case you were sad that Bruce Campbell wasn't in this movie, you'd actually be wrong. When listening to those records, one of the priests is actually the voice of Bruce Campbell. He's the one who actually says, "Destroy it! It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason." Something else about the records that's also interesting is it is mentioned that there are three volumes of the Necronomicon, which might be a reference to the fact that have been three different variations throughout the movies, or it could also be the fact that there are three Necronomicons and we just haven't seen the other two. And of course, one of the most obvious references, the cabin from the beginning of the movie that also appears again at the end. Now, I personally was not a huge fan of the beginning and end little section, mainly because I didn't feel it connected too well to the story. It was okay, but I felt it was almost just an excuse to be able to do the levitating rise opening title sequence. Here's one last little piece of information for you. The apartment building in the movie is called the Monde, which is actually an anagram for the word demon. So when it comes to Evil Dead Rise, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I, of course, enjoy any horror movie where anyone's on the chopping block, whether or not it's adults, kids, animals, anyone can go. So I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what is the name of the pizza place from this movie? It's actually called Henrietta's Pizzeria, which is definitely a reference to the character who appears mainly in Evil Dead 2. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there is a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.